Welcome back. So, for today I thought I would do something different than what I'm usually gonna be doing, which is, well, making stuff, forging stuff. You could almost call this a review video, but, well, it's gonna be some repairs as well. This sword here, it's a Hanwei, a Paul Chen Godfred Viking sword. First and foremost, I need to say I actually like the Hanwei forge, Paul Chen's works, because, well, most of them are functional and affordable, and some are even beautiful. Especially the higher tier stuff is really beautiful. But anyways, this one, this is a different story. The owner of this sword is a friend of mine, and he's having his birthday today, so I thought I would finish the repair of this one and get it back to him. I hope I'm not gonna be too much of a douche when I'm giving the reviews of this one, because they're not gonna be glowing. The story of this situation is like this. He left the sword at home, and his son and his friends were there, and they decided to play a bit with it. My friend's sparring sword were also involved, and you can kind of see where it ended up. This sharp sword here didn't fare as well as the blunted one. So as you can see, it's been taking some beating. By the way, this is what happens when you go edge to edge with another sword, especially if the sword is blunted. The blunted sword will win in a durability contest. So kids, please don't do this. Don't play with sharp swords, because you will hurt yourself and you will hurt the sword. Luckily enough, no one was harmed, which is the important part of it all. No one but the sword, of course. Let's just take a look a little bit about the description of this sword. Let's see here. Named for the feared 8th century Viking raider, the Paul Chen Godfred sword is built around a beautiful pattern-folded steel blade to replicate the pre-19th century originals. The interwoven leather grip, completed by a Damascus guard and pommel, we'll take a look at that, is matched by the leather-covered wood scabbard with bronze detailing and integral belt hooks. Superbly balanced due to the deeply fullered distal tapered blade profile, which is important. The Godfred is a true tribute to the legendary Norse smiths. Just from that text alone, we have a few things to look at. So when it comes to these bronze fittings, I'm not sure if it's really bronze. My guess is that it's actually brass that has been, well, sort of slathered with an aging compound and then decorated with those little studs. The leather work is nice enough, I think. I kind of like the handle, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. When it comes to these, the so-called integral belt hooks, in my reenactment experience and fighting experience, I would say that this is not a very good way to do it. This will jump off your belt in the fray, and all the running and running and rolling and everything you do. So you will eventually lose your scabbard this way. So let's talk a little bit about the blade. To be fair, the balance isn't too bad, actually. Viking swords overall usually lie around 1100 or 1200 gram, rarely over 1500 gram, rarely over that. Contrary to common belief, they're not heavy. Not heavy swords at all. Usually there's a hand's width to the point of balance. So the balance on this one, as they say, is kind of nice. But overall, it feels a little clunky. So they're talking about this pattern welded blade. We're gonna test if this really is a true pattern weld. When it comes to the fittings, it's darkened with some kind of compound, but it's really smooth. So it's really hard to say if it's real. Oh, and they also put a seppa on it, which is funny. Oh, what's this? It does look like the end here is not riveted. It actually looks like it's threaded. So it this is a $700 sword. So the pommel is actually loose. This is very typical for a threaded pommel that isn't securely riveted at the end. And yeah, that's sad for such a relatively pricey sword to have such a flaw. So we're gonna give the blade a quick etch to see if it's really pattern welded. It's gonna be sad if it isn't. As I said, I do like the Hanwei forge, and I would be disappointed if it showed up not to be pattern welded. So the first thing I will try is to see if there's actually real pattern weld in this sword. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some abrasives and I'm gonna just lightly scrub off the surface of the sword, and then I'm gonna give it a quick etch. I'm really no fan of these suddenly plunging fullers. This short end here, I really prefer when the fuller is sort of naturally ending in a nice tapered line. This sudden stop here gives a very kind of industrial feeling to it, which I don't think fits. So, just giving it a quick rub up there, and then taking some acetone, and then just quickly degrease it. So far it looks promising. Got a bucket of ferric chloride here. So, just see in a bit. Oh yeah. Well, I'm relieved. I don't know if you can see. Both the middle and the edges as a nice random pattern to it. The damage starts here, so I'm more or less gonna leave this part alone and just taper everything down so we get the notches out. So I've now ground down the notches on the sword down to 400 grit, and from there I'm gonna do some hand sanding. Gonna use some rough abrasives to start with, and then go finer and finer. I won't go too fine because it needs to. I left the original grind here, and I want the rest to sort of blend in to the original grind. You can also see that I've done some minor changes to the geometry of the blade. So here you can see, before it had this sort of straight edge and then out to the point, it sort of ended in this typical quite stout point that you find on many Chinese swords. It doesn't really belong on a Viking age sword, so I gave it this softer transition into the point and just slightly rounded the tip, because you don't really have this stout spear point. This is a cutting sword, and it also had these bevels, very defined bevels, and the flat in the middle, which also doesn't really belong on a Viking sword tip, so I've sort of blended them both, and while blending it I also softened the end of the fuller slightly, so it looks a bit less like a machine grind. These kind of things are, well, kind of unavoidable. As soon as you kind of relax and stop paying attention, the thing will bite you. But anyways, now we know it's sharp again. Oh no, I created a horror scene on the first date. Damn. Oh well. There, got the grind lines nice and cleaned up. Got it blended with the original grind. I didn't pay too much attention on grinding down the pattern in the fuller. I just let it be for now. Most part of it I sanded off most of the sort of gritty texture that was. There, Joel from the future here, and yeah, the sword is restored to its original shape, if not slightly better, I must say. The blade, once again, is sharp. I think it's lost a couple of grams from the grinding, and really the balance is just slightly improved, I must say. It's slightly more nimble than it was in the beginning. So, yeah, that's it. The Hanwei Godfred Viking-ish sword. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Hej då!